Welcome back to Hot Thai Kitchen. Today, I think it's about time we have another dose of sweetness around here. So that's right, I am making dessert today for those of you who've been waiting and requesting. I'm making something calledวยแขก, which is a deep-fried bananas. Now, most of you have probably been to a Thai restaurant and see deep-fried bananas on the dessert menu with ice cream and some sort of a honey sauce. I've personally seen them in essentially every restaurant that exists. But let me tell you, that is not what I'm showing you today. That's not the real deal. I'm showing you the real deep-fried bananas that are sold on the street kiosks in Thailand. Alright, now let's get going. First and foremost, the most important thing is bananas. We use a variety of bananas called gloi nam wa, and gloi nam wa is a short, stubby little guy. Like this, they're peeled already, and the reason why they're peeled already is because I got these frozen. They are essentially impossible to find outside of Southeast Asia, and this is the closest thing there is. And even the frozen kind, you got to be careful with brands, because certain brands will freeze them a little too ripe and they'll be too mushy when you go to fry them up. So these ones were labeled Saba, because that's what they call it in the Philippines, and that's mostly where they come from, the ones that are sold frozen over here. So I'm just going to slice these into 3 or 4. I like it a little chunkier. And I'm using a serrated knife because after they've been frozen, it gets a little soft and delicate. So just about, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch, 1/3 of an inch. If you like it a little thicker, go for it, no problem. Now, let's talk substitutes, because the chances are, if you don't live in an Asian-filled community, you're going to have a really hard time trying to find these. You can use plantains. And if you're going to use plantains, you want to use ones that are dark and black, essentially like this, because plantains, when they're green and yellow and look beautiful on the outside, they're too starchy to cook, too starchy to fry. It's not sweet enough, it's not pleasant. And the ones that are dark, the inside's going to be like a dark, bright orange yellow, and that's perfect. Alright? Or you can use regular bananas, like these guys, but don't get the one that's this yellow. These guys, get the ones where the tip are still green and there's still a small amount of green running along the length, the entire length, because once it's ripe enough to eat, it becomes too ripe to fry. Not enough starch to hold it together, and when you go to fry it, it's just going to explode on you. It's okay, you know, it's just not going to look as nice. Now, don't be fooled by these stubby little things here. These are called manzana bananas. They're from Colombia, and they look identical to gloi nam wa, to what we have in Thailand, but they're very different in a sense that those look like they're perfectly ripe, but they're not ripe at all. If you eat them, there'll be a dry sensation that coats the entirety of your mouth, and it's just an unpleasant feeling. These are great once the outside is turned black, just like the plantains. Alright, and they're widely available here in San Francisco because there's a lot of Latin community here. But do not use them. And if you do, wait for them to turn black. I've never personally tested it with these, so you know, if you do, let me know how it goes. So now we've got all our bananas cut up into thin slices, just like that. In Thailand, a lot of places try to cheap out and slice them really thin, so you know, one banana goes a long way. I hate that when I run into places like that. I'm like, you gotta get me more bananas, otherwise it's just all batter. Okay, now we're going to set these aside and we're going to work on the batter. We're going to start with the dry ingredients. What I have here is rice flour. 3/4 of a cup of rice flour. Now, why rice flour? Let's talk about some batter science. When you make a deep frying batter, what you want is a crisp texture and a dry it doesn't absorb oil, it doesn't hold on to a lot of oil. Now, the gluten in wheat flour is responsible for, is the enemy, let's just say, of crispiness and dryness. Rice flour, on the other hand, is completely devoid of gluten. It'll hold a much crispier consistency, and it won't sog up oil as much, which is why I like to use 100% rice flour. However, because it's devoid of gluten, it won't hold on to the food you're trying to fry as much, so you get a thinner coating, which is fine by me. I'd rather have a crispier texture than a thicker coating. But if you want, you can add a little bit of wheat flour, and that'll help the batter stick onto your bananas. But please realize that that will compromise your crispiness just a little bit. Alright, but I like to use 100% rice flour. Next thing to go in is, let's see, a half a teaspoon of salt. I'm using kosher salt, and if you use fine salt, you're probably going to go a little less than half a teaspoon. And that's a lot of salt for this volume, but Thai dessert is all about the sweet and salty balance, okay? It's usually not 100% sweet, and there's an obvious element of salt in there. Next, we're going to do 2 tablespoons of sugar. You can add more if you know your banana is not that sweet. Alright, you can make up the sweetness in the batter. Give that a nice stir. Then we're going to use a leavening agent, baking powder, about 1/4 teaspoon. Now this is going to give a light airiness to the batter so it's not so thick and dense. Alright, so that's going in there. And then next thing to go in would be a tablespoon of toasted white sesame seeds. This is going to give nuttiness to our banana. And when you toast these, you just put them in a dry saute pan and stir it around a little bit for, 4 to 5 minutes until they turn golden brown, and remove them from heat right away because they go from golden brown to burnt extremely quickly because they're so small. Alright, so just about a tablespoon of that. And then the best part, the part that distinguishes these from regular fried bananas, is shredded coconut meat. Okay, about a third of a cup, completely packed full. I got these frozen as well at the Asian market. Now, this is basically the meat of an older coconut. This is what coconut milk is made from. You basically take this, put a little water in it, squeeze it through some cheesecloth, you get fresh coconut milk. This comes from an older coconut where the flesh has thickened to about this much, and it becomes rich in coconut oil, which is responsible for the smell of coconut that we are so familiar with. Alright, it's not the meat from the young green coconut. The young green coconut has this smooth, velvety, delicious flesh that you can just eat fresh, but it's not going to have the richness that we need. So all that is going in there. Next is our liquid. Half a cup of just cold water. Now this is not a lot of liquid for this batter, but as I said, rice flour is completely devoid of gluten. So if you make the batter too thin, it'll hold on to the food even less than you want it to. Okay, so there's your batter. Now you want to use this batter right away. It's always best when it's fresh, because the chemical leavening is going to start to react prematurely, and all that gas bubbles that's being created is going to be gone if you leave this sitting for too long. Okay, so now we're going to move over to the frying table.